It's Tuesday, and that means it's time for the Falcon Focus podcast. We're live on Facebook Live on Tuesdays from 9:45 to 10:15 a.m. here from the Concordia cafeteria, archived on cuwfalcons.com. You can download the audio thanks to Podbean and listen through iTunes. My name is Matt Menzl. Our guests here on this edition include Jim Juergensen Jr. He's the athletic faculty rep, Concordia alum, a Concordia Hall of Famer for basketball and baseball. But we begin by talking ACHA men's hockey as they wrap up their season on the road this upcoming weekend and being joined by the senior goaltender Nate Eminger. And ACHA squad that right now sits with 14 victories and 16 defeats. Nate, first of all, thanks for being with us here this morning. You know, mentioned, okay, right now 14 and 16, but this team has been able to turn things around, having won now 6 consecutive. You look back now last 3 weeks during the 6-game win streak. In your opinion, what's been the key to this success?
There's been a lot more positive energy through the locker room. The guys are starting to get together, starting to come together more as a team. It took a little bit longer than we anticipated. We had a tough early games with conference teams, but the energy's up. We're feeling a lot better about what we're doing, and it seems to be working on the ice.
You talk about coming together. When you look at the roster, was it a relatively new look roster from that of last year?
Yeah, we lost some guys, a lot of key guys, especially our top scorer from last year graduated. So we had to bring in some freshmen, some guys that are getting used to college hockey.
This past weekend, beat St. Mary's 5-0, 4-1. You had 50 saves on Friday, another 40 saves on Saturday. Your thoughts on your performances?
I'm happy with it. It's always nice to get a shutout. Mm-hmm. It's been a while, other than Northern Michigan a couple weeks ago. Before that, it was 3 years. But it's great. It feels nice to be on the ice again, especially after a rough start to the season. You
talked about, off air, you had to come back from a couple of injuries. So you got a late start to this season. What took place? How were you able to overcome?
Well, I had two hip surgeries, so they happened over the summer. And I wasn't able to start playing again until Thanksgiving time. So it's been a lot of rehab, a lot of physical therapy, just getting the body back into shape again.
Well, the hip surgery, something you kind of anticipated. How did that come about?
I was having pain. So last year during my stint with the Ncaa program, I noticed a lot more pain throughout my hips. Was having problems going down, having to miss practice because of pain. So it was a push to that, but went to the doctor. They figured out what it was and took care of it almost instantly.
So did it take you a little bit of time to get back up to speed?
Yeah, it took me probably about a month and a half to get used to being a goaltender again.
And now you feel like you're at 100% or close to it?
I feel pretty close to 100%.
You look back at this past weekend on a Friday, freshman Christopher Moore, he recorded a hat trick in that victory against St. Mary's. Who are some of the players, during this 6-game win streak, in your opinion, that are stepping up and really playing well?
Yeah, Moore's been playing great. He's been an excellent addition for our program this year, especially being a freshman. Senior Benny Saras, he's been great this year for us. He's been one of our leaders even when I was out this year, so he took a huge step up. And of course, Jonathan Grotzky and Alec Morano have been our top guys all year, so they've really stepped it up and been one of the top guys in the locker room.
Explain to us, because you kind of mentioned you've been on the Ncaa Division III roster the last couple of years, now with the ACHA program. How does that come about, or how do you make that move? What goes into that?
Yeah, well, I looked into it a little bit last year. I knew I was going to be having hip surgery, so I knew it was going to be a little bit tougher to come back and play at a higher level. So I kind of varied into it a little bit, looked at the options, knew when I'd be able to come back, which would be basically 4 or 5 games into the NCAA season. So I just decided to rest my body, get it ready for an actual season so I could come in halfway and hopefully try to help the team out.
This is a topic I know I've brought up in past podcasts, but what are some of the big differences between ACHA hockey and Ncaa hockey? Is it just simply, from a competition standpoint? In your opinion, what's the differences? Are there differences?
There's a few. NCAA is definitely, you're going to be your top guys out there, whether it's D3 or D1. ACHA gives a little bit more of an option, so if you're a high school guy, you don't want to go off and play junior somewhere, you have that option. Otherwise, if you play a lower junior league, you can go there, or if you just want to play more games, you definitely, club is where it would be at. You play close to 35, 40 games.
Well, since your return from the hip surgeries, you've now played in 10 games this season with a 93 save percentage, a couple of shutouts along the way. You had a 63 save performance, one game against Aurora. Have you been pleased with the progress that you've made from where you were, say, November to where you are now?
Yeah. I'm really excited from where I started off when we started against the University of Pittsburgh to now. I've seen my performances start to play better, and I feel that the team's starting to play better as a whole now that we're starting to get rolling into this. So,
how about that Aurora game? And forget the score, but I mean, you faced 72 shots. I mean, is that one of those games? Do you get a chance to blink? I mean, it seems like the action's on your end of the ice quite a bit. You came through with 63 saves. Have you ever had a 63 save performance in the past?
It was definitely probably one of the highest I've had in my past. It was definitely one of those, I came off the ice after the first, I looked at the guys, I was like, guys, I need a break.
Yeah,
it's a lot of shots.
Help. Yeah.
But, I mean, they're a tough team. We tried to do our best we could with them, and they just had a better plan going into the game than we did.
You're one of the 3 goaltenders on the roster right now. How do you guys compare, maybe differ as far as skill set, maybe experience goes?
Yeah, so we're all a little bit different. I'm the only one out of the 3 that played juniors, so that helps a little bit. We kind of we all have a really good relationship with each other. So when we come to practice, we challenge each other, we'll push each other. I'll help them out as much as I can with my experience. So I'll kind of be like a goalie coach to them since we don't have one at the club level right now. So it's something that it's a really good relationship between the 3 of us, and it really helps us on the ice.
So how early do you find out if you're going to be the starting goaltender one game to the next?
I usually know the day before.
Okay. And does that help you as far as, just mentally preparing or physically preparing?
Yes, absolutely. I always hated when a coach would tell you that you're starting just before game time because you don't have that time to mentally prepare. You don't know exactly what's going to happen, so you come to the rink just thinking, oh, well, I don't know if I'm playing or if I'm sitting. So,
are goaltenders kind of like pitchers in baseball where if you know you're starting, you kind of want to be left alone, you're kind of in your own little planet away from the team, or is it not as mentally straining as maybe it is for a starting pitcher in baseball?
I think it is. My routine always consists of me being by myself. Even in between periods, I'm in the hallway sitting by myself or chit-chatting with athletic trainer or something of the sorts. But I like to know ahead of time and make sure that I'm prepared.
Let's go back in time. When did you start playing hockey, and how were you introduced to the sport?
So I grew up in northern Minnesota, up by Grand Forks, North Dakota.
Okay.
And so it's kind of hockey up there. Not much else. But this is going to be my 22nd year playing, and I'm 25, so I've been playing for quite a long time. I started playing goalie in my 20th season, so it's been part of my life for a very long time.
So what pushed you toward the goaltending position?
Really, I don't know. I liked it. Growing up, there's a certain age bracket where they transition from goalie, you got to rotate through, and I just loved playing it, and I kept playing it over and over again, and no one else wanted to, so it stuck.
What position did you play before that?
I was a winger.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's a big adjustment.
Yeah.
So how did you go about preparing to play that position?
A lot of training. Those goalie camps were kind of just becoming a big topic, so definitely went to a lot of different goalie camps throughout summertime. But throughout that, you just kind of learned as you go.
So growing up, did you watch a lot of NHL hockey or college hockey on TV?
I did.
Did you have who's your favorite team, and maybe did you have a favorite player or current player that you try to emulate yourself after?
My favorite NHL team is the Detroit Red Wings.
Okay.
Growing up in northern Minnesota, close to Grand Forks, the big university up there was the University of North Dakota. So that kind of had a big impact on my hockey career being up there. So the reason I actually became a goalie was because of a goaltender called Juergensen.
Okay.
His brother is actually a center for the Minnesota Wild. I got to know him very well, and throughout that time, I actually picked my number because of him and became a goalie because of him. So,
but how does someone from Minnesota become a Red Wings fan?
My dad's from the Detroit area,
okay.
So I got family out there, and it just kind of like my mom was from the Green Bay area, so I became a Packer fan, and so my dad's from there, so I became a Red Wings fan.
So then prior to coming to Concordia, you played in the Minnesota Junior Hockey League with Marquette. How do you go about finding a junior team? How does that whole process work?
It's a tough process, but I knew people, which really helps out if you know someone. But it's really, you search the websites, figure out when tryouts are coming if you weren't recruited, and you just kind of gotta hope you show up, you perform your best, and they like what they see on the ice.
And then how did you end up here at Concordia?
It's not far from home now, anyways. So I kind of came in. I knew about it coming out of high school, and decided that I wanted to come here after spending some time away, and actually ended up coming in as a walk-on and battled my way through.
According to your CUWFalcons.com bio, your major is business management and marketing. If that's still the case, what are your aspirations after hockey? When hockey's all said and done, what are you hoping to do with that major?
I'm hoping to do something in the sport world still. I would like to do something with sport marketing or sales. I actually have been looking into doing some coaching stints with some junior teams as well.
Now it's time for our rapid fire segments. We'll get to know you a little bit better. You mentioned your pregame routine already, how you kind of go about mentally preparing for a start. How about food, drink? Do you have a certain, pregame meal you go to, or certain food you go to, certain drink you go to before a game?
Yeah, usually it used to be chicken parm, but now it's kind of transitioned where I'll just have like a turkey sub or something,
Okay.
something light.
Hobbies?
Besides hockey, back home I'll do watch a lot of racing. I used to race stock cars for a
Okay.
year, so that was kind of a big part of my family's life.
How about hidden talents?
I used to play violin, guitar, and the
kidding.
trombone.
Okay, how far back are we talking?
Like 6th grade.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just gave it up now?
I gave it up. I decided to play sports instead of music.
Did you play other sports besides hockey growing up?
Yeah, I played mainly soccer and hockey. I tried wrestling a little bit, and I liked it. It was a family thing. And then I tried baseball a little bit, liked it, but just hockey became the top sport.
So if you weren't playing hockey right now, what would be your backup plan? What would be your next go-to sport?
Probably soccer.
Okay. What position?
I was a goalie.
Okay. So, does that help a little bit, having that experience and then, transitioning to being a goaltender? I know there's a little bit of differences there with stick and all that, but are there some similarities?
A little bit. A lot of angles are, angles about the same. That's kind of the most important part of being a goalie. But it transitions a little bit. Net size is obviously very different. So,
Top athletic moment to date at any level?
it probably would be in my junior career in Marquette when we went to the national tournament out in Hartford, Connecticut.
If you can go back in time and go to any pro sporting event, all time, doesn't matter what the sport, is there one sporting event that jumps to mind? I wish I could have been a fan in the stands at.
I got to say the 1980 Miracle.
Okay,
team.
I figured you'd say
Yeah.
that. And then hometown now is Green Bay.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of the Packers, when you go back home, what do you love about Green Bay? What when you think about Green Bay, what comes to mind?
It's such a hometown feel. Not growing up there, not sure what I expected when I moved there. Now I go home and everyone's super friendly. It's what you expect out of a small town that isn't quite like a big city yet. Definitely it's growing, but the people are what make the town.
Well, Nate, we appreciate your time. Best of luck this weekend as you guys wrap up your season. I'll let you get to class, and best of luck.
Awesome, thank you.
When we come back, we'll talk with Jim Juergensen Jr. as we continue with the Falcon Focus podcast. Welcome back to the Falcon Focus Podcast, episode 19, as we continue on this Tuesday live on Facebook Live, archived on cuwfalcons.com. You can download the audio thanks to Podbean and listen through iTunes. So we go from ACHA hockey to talking Concordia athletics with Jim Juergensen Jr., who, let me get the titles correct, besides being a Concordia alum and Hall of Famer, director of LCMS teacher placement, you're director of faith integration for athletics, and then faculty athletic rep. So let's break it down. You look at those three titles. What do those titles mean?
Yeah, so I'm kind of half and half between the School of Education. So I'm faculty in the School of Education, and within that I do a number of things. One of those is teacher placement. So for our candidates who are training to be teachers out in our Lutheran schools, I'm the one who gets to work through the process of helping them with their first calls out there in their schools. So that's the placement position. And also supervise student teachers, teach in the School of Education, do a number of things with that role. And then a newer role, a few years ago, President Ferry and Pastor Smith called me into their office and threw this new opportunity at me with this position that would kind of combine faith and sports and kind of help connect the ministry side of things through our athletics program. So the Director of Faith Integration for Athletics, that title kind of came later, basically is an opportunity for me to connect with athletes, to connect with coaches, to be in support of them however they can as they not only grow as athletes here, but also in their spiritual walk, wherever that might be for them individually. And gives me an opportunity to combine two of my passions, faith and sports, so that's pretty cool.
And it's so important, and I think sometimes you forget when you think Concordia, I mean, these student athletes, I mean, there's a bigger calling than just being here as a student and as an athlete.
Right, absolutely. And that's something that when I go around and talk to teams, I always make the point that I understand that they're all coming from different places. Some of them might have come from church homes where that was a big part of their life and faith has been a big part of their life, and others, maybe this is a brand new thing, and maybe they don't even understand where they're at. And I just like to tell them that it doesn't really matter, because right now they're here for a purpose. God has brought them here, and He doesn't make accidents, and so they have this opportunity here to grow in their faith along with growing in their academics and in their athletics.
And then what does the job entail as being the faculty athletic rep?
Yeah, that's kind of just a side position. I do a lot of signing of eligibility forms with that. Probably the most significant part of that role is I'm kind of the go-between. I understand the world of faculty. I understand the world of athletics. And every Ncaa institution has to have a faculty athletic rep. So I was appointed in that because I kind of understand both sides of that. And if the student athlete is having an issue where, a lot of times, especially spring sports, but throughout the year, maybe they're having to miss a class because they're on the road. Some faculty maybe don't understand that. I help our faculty understand the policy, and that kind of thing. So sometimes I serve as a go-between to just kind of support and represent our student athletes when maybe there's issues in a class.
Speaking of faculty and athletics, should mention too, it's Professor Night inside the John Book Fieldhouse tonight for the women's basketball game at 7 o'clock versus MSOE. So on average, and I'm guessing fans and students, if they don't know who you are, they see at many sporting events. Sure. On average, if you had to guess, how many sporting events do you probably attend as far as Concordia athletics go in a school year?
Wow, that's a lot.
A lot, yeah, I was going to say, you're on the sideline, the stands.
Probably just about every night of the week, I'm in the bleachers somewhere because I also have 3 teenagers who all play multiple sports. So between their sports and Concordia sports, I'm in a gym, during this time of the year, at the rink, whatever. So if I'm free, I'm here, and try to get out and support our teams across the board as much as possible. And really, I feel that I kind of call it a ministry of presence. So if I'm just a guy who's coming in and talking to a team or working with an athlete when they have a problem, but I'm not around and I'm not being supportive, then I'm just somebody. And so I think it's important for me to be there to support our teams physically and root them on. Plus, it's fun. I love sports, and it's an enjoyable part of the job for sure.
So from your perspective, in your opinion, the current state right now of CW athletics?
Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, it's exciting, man. There's so much growth and so many new sports, and And if you really look at it across the board, we're extremely competitive in so many different sports. If you look at a lot of college athletics programs, you can kind of pinpoint one or two sports. So that's kind of their niche. And then maybe in the other areas, not so much. But we're pretty steady across the board, competitive, solid, competing, for conference championships. And so I would say we're in a great place, not just in terms of wins and losses, but also just in terms of having a great leadership, great coaching staff, student athletes that are fun to be around, that are good representations of Concordia. And so I'd say it's in a pretty good place.
Now, you played basketball, baseball at Concordia in the late 80s, early 90s.
Yep.
How challenging was that, to juggle both sports, to play both sports at such a high level?
Yeah, it was a challenge, and I would say maybe less of a challenge than it would be if somebody tried to do that now, because the sports are more year-round now. But it was difficult because when I arrived on campus, we were right into preconditioning and preseason stuff with basketball, and that rolls into the grind of the regular season. Then come about this year, I was actually just talking about this with my son the other day, who also plays the same two sports. And about this time of the year, you'd start seeing my three-point percentage go down because baseball was my main sport.
Okay.
And I'd start to throw and start to focus a little more on baseball, and I was in the gym a little bit less shooting. And but yeah, this time of the year I was doing both. I was doing a morning, 6:30 a.m. baseball practice, an afternoon basketball practice, and maybe working out later at night, kind of a thing. So, but I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Was that always the plan though when you came here to play both sports?
Yes, and that was really the drawing card for me here. I had some opportunities focusing on baseball to go and give it a shot at some higher level schools and just play baseball. And Coach Kuiper, who was my baseball coach here, and Coach Rasmussen, who was my basketball coach, they really sold me on this opportunity to play two sports, and I wouldn't change it for the world. What a great opportunity that was.
I do want to dig deeper into something you mentioned, because I was going to ask you this too, because you look in maybe in more recent time, a couple of names that come to mind: Billy Bynum, Kevin Kuvasir, you have Andy Becker, Kyle Barth, Corey Stark. Those are some of the athletes that have more recently played both basketball and baseball. But you bring up a good point. It's getting to the point now where playing multiple sports is getting harder and harder because there is such a bigger demand, is there not?
Yeah, absolutely. And not just at the college level. Going all the way down to youth sports. And I think that's I don't know if the word dangerous is the right thing, but it's a little bit of a slippery slope because kids are kind of being funneled into choosing a sport earlier on and really focusing on that. And I think it's a really healthy thing to play multiple sports. But certainly at the college level, just the amount of time that it takes to be successful, the amount of commitment in the weight room, training outside of just the regularly scheduled practices and events. It's a challenge, but it can still be done. And I think that's one of the cool things is that our coaches are willing to work together if they have an athlete who really wants to do that. I see our coaches working well together to make that happen.
Basketball-wise, you graduated as the program's all-time leading scorer, now sixth with 1,288 points. You mentioned the three-point shooting. You attempted 573 threes in your career. One game you went 6 for 6 versus Wisconsin Lutheran back in '91. You're fifth in rebounding at 594. Go back to your basketball days. What are some of the memories that jump out?
Yeah, wow. It's funny. I talk about this with the current guys on the team that, certainly there's numbers and there's stats, and it's funny, as time goes by, those things matter less. Just being at CIT, I got a chance to hang out with several of my old teammates, and we got together, and the stats and the Hall of Fame and that kind of stuff, it really isn't that big of a deal anymore. It's really more about those relationships that we developed as teammates. But at the same time, unbelievable memories here in both sports of just the, great wins and also some tough losses, that I still remember like they were yesterday. And just going through that grind with your teammates is a pretty cool thing. And then I'd say the other thing, and I don't know if you were gonna bring this up as well, but the other memory I have is that my wife now we're just about 25 years now this summer. We'll be married 25 years, and that opportunity to both be playing basketball here. Actually, both wore the same number, 34. Coincidentally, it wasn't planned. Is a pretty cool thing as well.
Both 1,000-point scorers, both Hall of Famers.
Yep.
Coach Cassidy, Sean Cassidy was one of your teammates as well. Right. And you look back, what kind of a teammate, what kind of a player was he? And could you sense back then that coaching would be the path he would take?
Yeah, absolutely. He was kind of a coach on the floor. he didn't play a whole lot. He was behind arguably one of the greatest players ever to play here, Frank Ncaa. So Sean, wasn't on the court a whole lot, but you could just see the coach in him. And kind of a small world thing, Sean and I actually ended up teaching together at Orange Lutheran High School.
Kidding.
He was a head basketball coach. I was his assistant. So we went from being teammates to coaching together. And I was one of the first people to recommend him as a head coach here, because I just saw him, firsthand what he could do and what he can bring to the table as a coach and somebody who can develop a program, for sure.
And what was neat was when he came back here, he spent 2 years as an assistant for Coach Wayne Rasmussen, who you played for, the late, great Wayne Rasmussen. Yes. When you think back to Coach Rass, what are some of the memories you have of him?
Oh, man. Some of them I probably can't say on the air. He was pretty tough on me. No, but an unbelievable man of God. An unbelievable, kind of that old school, you don't see it too much. I mean, he was a full-time professor, teaching full-time and coaching, and just all in on both. A very wise man, had lots of good one-liners that those of us who played for him, never forget. And, he would, say, why are we running the GMA offense, general milling around, that kind of stuff. I mean, that was Coach Rasmussen, but just an unbelievably intelligent coach and person who also knew how to connect with his athletes and develop, really, really lifelong relationships. And he's dearly missed. Yeah,
I miss hearing him say great Caesar's goals.
Absolutely.
That was his favorite goal, one line. But,
yes.
You look at baseball and you hit 361, 13 home runs, 58 RBIs is the stats that are located as far as your career totals go. Do you remember your first home run?
I actually do remember my first home run, because I actually only hit my last 2 years, essentially.
Okay.
My first 2 years, I focused on pitching, kind of my choice. I had a lot of goals in baseball and was hoping to get drafted, and I was focusing on pitching and working on that, so I decided I wasn't going to hit. And my sophomore year, late in the year, our first baseman took a ball to the face and had to be removed from the game. And coach said, "Hey, you want to go play first?" Sure. So I hadn't really done much batting practice all year, hadn't played in the field all year, and I came up, first pitch I saw, I hit it over the left center field fence, and I called in the dugout, just kind of being silly, like, I'm going to take this guy deep, and I did. It was one of those just crazy coincidental moments, and so that was my first home run in college.
Was that out here at Old Kite Field?
At the old field, yeah, twisted around the other way, so I do remember my first one, because it kind of came out of nowhere.
I'll tell you, and you think about Kite Field as we knew it, or we dubbed it, toward the end. That was a tricky ballpark to play, because, with the wind blowing off the lake, you're right there. I got to imagine it caused nightmares at times as a pitcher.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and it would be cold, and it would be, sometimes as a pitcher you can have that advantage because you can get warmed up, and as a hitter, your hands are freezing and that kind of thing. But yeah, cold wind blowing off the lake. A lot of times it was blowing out, to left field. So as a pitcher, you better keep the ball down, or you're in trouble. But yeah, lots of memories of that field. The outfield was lower than the infield, so if you were standing at home plate, you could only see about from the knees up of the outfielders. So the old snow fence out there, that was a liability. But great memories. I remember days of having it's actually starting fires out in the bullpen in a bucket to try and stay warm. Those are definitely a little bit different than Capco Park, that's for sure. These guys are pretty spoiled.
You can see Dr. Kuiper trying to light the field on fire to dry it up
Absolutely.
To get a game in. And speaking of Dr. Val Kuiper, how neat is it now to kind of essentially work alongside him?
Yep, absolutely. It's fun. It's fun to relive the good old days, and it's neat to be in partnership and ministry with him now. Certainly another great man of faith who was really impactful on me.
You mentioned it's all about the relationships, but I do want to ask you what it means, to be in the Hall of Fame here. You're going to be considered one, and always will be considered one of the top athletes to ever come through here. First of all, how did you find out, and what does it mean to you?
Yeah, well, actually, it's kind of a funny story. I like to tell my classes about this sometimes when I'm telling them about the good old days. But I was working at Concordia, Nebraska, and I had been out long enough, and I heard some rumblings that maybe I was going to be nominated for the Hall of Fame, and went out to get the mail one day, and there was a letter from the Hall of Fame nominating committee from Concordia, University of Wisconsin. I was pretty excited. So I ran in the house and I opened it up, and I said, "Stephanie," my wife, "Stephanie, check it out." And I read the letter. It said, dear Stephanie. Congratulations on being selected. And
that was the year before, correct?
Yeah, that was the year before. So she got in a year ahead of me, deservedly so. She is the real athlete of the family. I think she still has the assist record, by far, and scored over 1,000 points as an All-American point guard. But so she likes to hold that over me that she got in first. But fortunately, the next year I did get in, and that was really meaningful to be able to get in for both basketball and baseball, and to have my coaches there, and a lot of my teammates there. Because those things don't happen unless you have good teammates, and but it means a lot. It means a lot to be honored in that way at a special place like Concordia.
I was going to ask you that to wrap things up. When you think about your time here on this campus, in this current capacity, going back to your days as a student, your family ties to this university, what does Concordia mean to you?
Concordia is it's home. It is honestly home. Actually, this morning I was thinking of that. I teach over in Chemnitz, and I'm coming through the catacombs, and I'm like, some things haven't changed at all, And then I'm at other parts of this campus, and I'm just blown away. Like, wow, this is the same Concordia that I went to with all the new, buildings and facilities and programs, athletically and academically. It blows me away to see the growth that's happened here, but it's still the same place. We've managed to grow in great ways, and what a blessing that is from God to grow like that, but still be that community that it was here in the late 80s and early 90s when I was here. And so it's an awesome blessing to come here every day and work at this place and still feel like I'm at home and yet see the awesome new things that are happening.
Well, Jim, thanks a lot for your time, and continued success.
Appreciate it.
We thank
you.
Both Nate and Jim for joining us here this week. Don't forget, join us tonight. If you cannot be in the John Book Fieldhouse in person, we'll have the game broadcast for you at 7 o'clock. Concordia Women's Basketball versus MSOE on the Falcon Athletic Network. Until next Tuesday, thanks for joining us, though, for the Falcon Focus Podcast.